So it looks like
The box is like office drive is like Dropbox that also can do the office stuff systems all have, and then there's groups which is all separate. Like you know, the Yahoo thing, like you had your group, and then your email stuff, you put files in, and you can put a database, which is just like all they have is nice. So then Google just has the stuff that's always separate. Yeah, that's what I think. Especially as for all of the higher Yahoo stuff. Oh, I don't need this, just bring it to the trash can, so
Good, how are y'all? Good.
Sheet music in front of them, and they're just gonna keep letting it sit on slide. And then it was okay. Easier to undo things.
yes, and that's what I'm thinking.
That's a good way to put it.
Hey, good, how are you?
How you doing? You.
Oh,
Yeah.
somebody.
Yeah.
It's coming in. Yep.
How you doing?
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay.
But it's like you can set it so that when I hit just reply, when I send something, I hit reply, either.
It looks good. Almost. It's pretty much done. Sean told me he'd be there at 8 in the morning. I told him I'll be over there. And we just walked through the building, agreeing on what sections we cut off. So it looks good. They did a good job. It's very neat.
Yeah. Yeah, you do it.
Yeah. But I got a call from Jeff Cave, a text today. He wants to meet about Waterstone, and I said, okay. So I'm gonna try and meet up with him tomorrow. And see what he's thinking. I'm just gonna get it. I just wanna hear what he's thinking. Hi, Jim.
It's okay, we're here.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Right, what is that?
We got, yours is in the upper right,
I'm not doing it. It's just like pulling teeth to make me come at all.
you're in the upper right-hand corner.
Okay.
Open it up, slideshow, just keystroke through it.
Boom. Dum, boom, 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 boom. Blah, 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 blah. Blah, 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 blah.
But you have to talk into the microphone. Okay.
Will make it go real good. Remember, they do verbatim minutes here.
No, we
They do
don't.
clean out the ums, ahs,
Very
and
detailed, but
ohs.
not quite.
Not quite.
They clean
verbatim.
out the ums, ohs, and ahs.
Okay.
Yeah. And
How late you think we'll be?
all of
We're 6A.
Well, we're relatively up top, it looks like.
Yeah, it should come up quick enough.
the recommendations.
It depends on how many public comments. go in.
Proclamation, resolution retiring the K-9.
Yeah, I think they're going to put in an additional resolution, and we may have some folks here to talk about the proposed I-40.
Heather nailed that.
Expansion.
Well, I did. And
That's gonna be like 10 years to get that done, though.
Yeah, but it's going through their neighborhood, Eubanks.
That's tough
Right there.
because he was.
So they'll be here.
We might be able to
Okay.
squeeze. Thank you.
Yay.
You're welcome.
Okay.
They'll be before us.
Yeah.
Nice. No injuries.
Who's presenting this?
I don't know.
Katie didn't notify anybody?
I don't know.
Huh?
I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know?
I don't know who she
Did she-
notified and who she doesn't notify.
Does she come to chair, vice chair? I mean, to agenda review?
Nope. She follows the Donna Baker plan.
Which is what?
Don't come.
I come for 17 years, it's not
I
going to
know.
happen now.
She ain't come for 3.
But usually she writes down on her program who, unless she herself is getting it.
Don't know.
I'm praying. I am so praying.
Yeah.
Stay true to no questions, it stays on consent, the last meeting. They had that came up on the agenda last time.
Yes, they could.
If we don't tell them, we're gonna pull out consent.
every month or just 1 month at a time?
She does 1 month at a time.
Okay, just send her an email. So I don't know if she needs
Okay.
her phone.
All right, good evening. Welcome to this November 13th regular meeting of the Orange County Board of Commissioners here at the Southern Human Services Center in Chapel Hill. Got a wonderful agenda tonight. So before we get started, are there any additions or changes to the agenda? There's actually a proposed resolution that Commissioner Jacobs brought forward.
Oh, do I need to?
Yeah, so I was going to defer to you if you wanted to add that to
Sure.
the agenda, to the resolutions.
Okay. It's proposed as item 4B.
Okay, so, yeah, so that would be item 4B. There's one resolution on the agenda now. We just add that as a second one. Any objections?
I would register an objection. I'm sure I know what the vote's going to be, but I will continue in my objections to adding last-minute resolutions that the public doesn't know about.
All right. All right, so do you want us to take a vote on that, Commissioner McKee, so you can formally record your
I've
objection?
registered my opposition.
All right.
I'm good with it.
Then we'll just add that item to 4B, noting Commissioner McKee's objection. That's the resolution opposing NCDOT incursion into Oosting Natural Area. Any other changes or additions to the menu, to the agenda? I didn't have dinner yet. No, I did. I hooved it before I came here in the car. Okay, seeing none, then we will proceed on to the Orange County Arts Moment. So this is a point at the meeting where we recognize a local artist and recognize Orange County's diverse and rich artistic community. And so I think it looks like Molly Bright is going to introduce our artist tonight. Is that correct?
Way bright.
Oh, sorry, Molly Waybright.
Way bright, not just bright.
Yes.
Hello, my name is Molly Waybright. I am the Orange County Arts Commission intern, and I recently graduated from UNC with a minor in creative writing. And while I was there, I had the pleasure of taking 3 classes with Daniel Wallace, who I am introducing as our artist tonight. He is the author of 6 novels, including Big Fish, Ray in Reverse, The Watermelon King, Mr. Sebastian and the Negro Magician, The Kings and Queens of Rome, and most recently, Extraordinary Adventures. His children's book, published in 2014, and for which he did both the words and the pictures, is called The Cat's Pajamas, and it is adorable. In 2003, Big Fish was adapted and released as a movie, and then in 2013, the book and the movie were mishmashed together and became a Broadway musical. His novels have been translated into over 24 languages. Daniel is the J. Ross McDonald Distinguished Professor of English at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, his alma mater, where he directs the creative writing program. Daniel Wallace.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad that you do this sort of thing, that Katie controls and manipulates us to come here because she is in total control of us. I don't know if you know that. She said I only have 40 minutes to read, so I'm going to cut this back a little bit and make it shorter than normal. This is a story, actually it's 2 pages long, but it is a whole short story, and it's inspired by the men in my hometown in Birmingham who were divorced in middle age, and there were a lot, and I guess the women too, but it felt like the men were sort of cast out in middle age. And so I wrote this little piece called The Men in the Woods. The men who live in the woods behind my house have been getting out of hand for some time. They were all in their mid-50s, golfers, formerly, and meat eaters. Jolly men in general, but since their wives had sent them away to live in the woods, they had become grumpy and discontent. At night, they would bellow and howl. They want their televisions and ice makers and chairs beside the vents. They live like animals now in badly made straw huts and eat anything that wanders too close to their turf. We know what's happening to our dogs and cats. But there's nothing we can do. Some of these men are very powerful. All of them belong to the country club. Last night from a window, I saw them leaving the woods and marching single file toward my home. They knocked at the door. "What is it?" I said, staring at their wretchedness through the peephole. "What do you want?" "Your telephone," they said. "We'd like to use your telephone." "That's out of the question," I said. "You can't come in. My wife," "Your wife," they said. She won't allow it." "His wife won't allow it," said one of them. "His wife says no," said another. "She must be wonderful," the first one said. "Really, I bet she is." "She is," I said. "My wife is wonderful." "We knew your father," one of the men said. "You're not your father." Then they went away, grumbling, back into the woods. Later that night in bed, I told my wife what had happened. "They came here?" she said. I nodded. She was appalled. "I want you to go down there and tell them not to do that. Tell them never to come here again." "Now?" I said. "It's midnight." "Now," she said. "For me." She kissed me on the cheek. I walked down the little trail which led to the woods behind our house. I saw a light, followed it. The men were cooking squirrel around a fire. They were drinking coffee from old tin cups. They bellowed and wailed, but they seemed to be having a pretty good time. "Hey, fellas," I said, and all the bellowing stopped, and they looked up to me and smiled. "Please don't come to our house anymore, okay?" They looked at each other, then into the fire. "Okay," they said, shrugging their shoulders. "That's fine." It didn't seem to mean that much to them. All they had wanted was the phone. When I turned to go, I could see my house on the hill above me and watched as one light after another was killed, and it was all darkness. It seemed I could even hear the doors lock and shut as my wife prepared for sleep. My house seemed to disappear into the black sky. I paused. "Going away so soon?" one of the men said. The fire was bright and warm. "Yeah," said another, "and just when we were getting to know you." Thanks.
Delightful. Thank you for that, for sharing that with us. And thank you to Katie, another outstanding arts moment. All right, that brings us to the public comment section of the meeting. This portion of the public comments is dedicated to folks who have signed up to speak to an item that's not on the printed agenda. If you're here to speak to an item that is on the printed agenda, we'll call you for those comments when we get to that item. There are several folks signed up to speak at this point in the meeting.
Okay.
And so if you just come up to the podium and Commissioner Rich will start the timer, you'll have 3 minutes. First up is Eugene Casal, and then it'll be Natasha Elliott.
Hello, everyone. I'm Eugene Casal. I'm a 36-year Orange County resident and a 28-year Northwood homeowner. Northwood is aware that the NCDOT wants to reroute Eubanks Road through our neighborhood. I am here today representing Northwood, the residents, many of whom are in the audience. So I'd like to ask everyone from Northwood to please stand up. We learned about the DOT plan to disrupt our neighborhood much like you did. We are shocked and we're opposed to the plan. The majority of our 81 houses in Northwood have already met twice, and we are all in agreement. We are very worried about the loss of houses, the effect on our property values, the effect on our well and septic systems, the increase in noise and air pollution, and loss of our neighborhood character as a safe, walkable, protected habitat. We are interested in trying to find an alternative solution that solves the problems that NCDOT are trying to solve, but at the same time preserving our neighborhood to the greatest extent possible. As an extraterritorial jurisdiction, we are appealing to you for your support to help us understand and navigate the various issues as we move forward. We would like to be included in future Orange County Commissioner meetings where this topic may be discussed. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Natasha Elliott, and then Cheryl Andrews.
Good evening. Donna handed you a handout already that our agency prepared. Please excuse the date. We thought we were coming on the 8th, and then I had to call Donna, and she told me it was tonight. So I'm here as the Executive Director at Central Piedmont Community Action, and we were formerly Joint Orange-Chatham Community Action. I wanted to just come tonight with Cheryl Andrews and my Weatherization Director, who's now sick, just to share a couple of successes that the agency has had in providing services in Orange County. So the first program on the handout is the Weatherization Assistance Program. And so for that program for fiscal year 17-18, which ended June 30th, 2018, we weatherized 14 homes in the county, and we provided heating and air repair replacement services to 6 homes in the county. And at the bottom, those measures could include performing air sealing, insulation, duct sealing, cleaning and tuning, or replacing the unit, water tank insulation, replacing or repairing hot water heaters, windows, doors, just a gambit of things. And so the average cost to weatherize a home we found this year was about $2,122.35. The average cost to prepare the heating and air repair and replacement services was around $5,182, and the total cost was about $60,809.44 that we spent in Orange County on these measures to help, make the homes tight, to help provide lower energy bills so the family can have a little more disposable income. So I also come to you tonight as we are definitely in need of board membership from Orange County. We currently have Ms. Bonnie Hammersley as a board member, but we do need a low-income representative and a public official, not a public official, a private industry representative on our board. So if you all know anybody, even members of the audience, who would like to be on our board, you can definitely go to our website, www.cpcanc.org, which is also on your handout, to find out about opportunities for volunteering or becoming a member of our board. And that's all I have for you this evening.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for coming and for the work that you're doing. And we certainly appreciate that and the commitment to fighting poverty in our community.
Thank you.
All right, next up is, Cheryl Andrews.
Thank you very much. Again, my name is Cheryl Andrews, and I am the Community Services Block Grant Director for Central Piedmont Community Action, and I have the pleasure of serving under Natasha Elliott. The Community Services Block Grant Program, or CSBG, assists low-income families that are striving to become more economically self-sufficient. We provide wraparound support and assistance to families in Chatham, Durham, Orange, and Randolph counties. The participants may receive assistance with employment, education and training, basic support such as transportation, housing, and childcare, as well as with making better use of personal and community resources and with becoming more constructively engaged in the community. We have case managers that work with participants for up to 2 years, identifying and mitigating economic barriers and basically shoring up families so that they can make progress with their self-sufficiency goals. The assistance that we provide means so much to low-income families that are struggling and that are burdened with their life circumstances and that are struggling financially, many of whom have no other support system. So for last program year, we assisted 43 low-income individuals, families in Orange County. Of that number, 3 rose above 100% of the federal poverty guideline, and that was last program year. The average positive change in annual income from the beginning of the program year until the end was $5,804. 11 of the individuals that we served were unemployed and gained employment during the program year. 3 of the participants that we served were employed and gained better employment during the program year. We had 16 that completed education and training programs and earned credentials to help them find employment. We had 5 that transitioned from insecure housing or homelessness to safe, secure, and affordable housing. And we provided financial assistance related to education and employment to 15 of our participants. The total expenditures for the year for Orange County was $186,929. And we also, I must say, had one of our participants from Randolph County, not Orange County, but Randolph County. Next year, we'll have one from Orange County. That was awarded as Participant of the Year by our state association. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, great work being done. We appreciate it. Next up is John Hollingworth, and then Waddy Davis.
All right. Good evening, honorable commissioners. My name is John Hollingsworth. I, along with Kelsey Berlin, own a property at 114 Northwood Drive in the Northwood neighborhood that was referenced earlier. I come to you tonight with a spirit of gratitude, deep gratitude. Number one, as we learned of this proposal, and as was mentioned earlier, our entire neighborhood came together, and you saw them rise earlier. And I have a huge amount of gratitude for an informed and thoughtful set of neighbors to come with me. I also have a huge feeling of gratitude for the past and current Board of Commissioners of Orange County, because I must also profess I was a little bit ignorant. I did not exactly know what the county did for me or what it did in general. So I have done some research on the website and was extremely pleased to find the goals and mission statements of a number of the different agencies under the umbrella of Orange County. Specifically, those goals and missions are specifically challenged by this proposal. I saw items about well and septic protection that are specifically under the auspices of the board. Those would definitely be challenged and threatened in our neighborhood. I saw things talking about walkability and physical activity. That's a huge component of our neighborhood as it is right now, and that would be threatened, if not destroyed, by this proposal. Also found a master aging plan that discussed how we want to promote age in place, and the homes that are in this neighborhood promote that, the nearby services promote that, as well as explaining how to use the transit system. And this neighborhood is very deeply affected by the local transit system. Lastly, I'm grateful for a representative democracy, where I as a citizen can come and petition you, the board. You are my elected representatives. I voted for many of you, the ones that I could. And I also want to end with a petition to urge you to make place for this issue in upcoming meetings in the agenda. I know you are all very busy, but this is, given the timing of this and how fast this is moving, I really do urge you to make this a priority for the board. And lastly, I would beseech each of you to become a champion of this project and to come to our cause and help keep Orange County great by protecting a great neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Waddy Davis, and then Eric Brew.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Waddy Davis. I'm a 30-year combat veteran, and I'm a Orange County resident. And I've been part of Northwood subdivision for the past 30 years and a property taxpayer, as many of my colleagues are here tonight. You know, I'm here just to follow up what they have to say and make an appeal to the county commissioners that on the I-40 widening project, and that we would be added to future discussions on this subject. And, you know, we're a community of families that want Northwood to remain vibrant and a peaceful place that it is, to raise our families, to raise our grandkids, and to pursue the goals to make a better quality of life for ourselves and the community. So I want to thank you for your consideration in the future to include us in on that discussion as it comes up before you. We'd like to be a part of that. I want to thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Eric Brew.
Thank you. My name is Eric Brew. I'm a resident of the Northwood neighborhood, and the folks that have spoken so far today have been accurate and have, I think, spoke very truthfully and correctly about the issue. It took us all by surprise, and even some of the officials in the town and the county that we've spoken with expressed similar surprise, which, to say it again, surprised us. We thought, well, we can't be the first ones to hear about this, but we kind of were. I have a little bit of experience in the in working in a transportation planning assistance role with Chatham and Orange counties, and I do know that the DOT usually comes with more than one option, even if that option is do nothing. Well, we were proposed with one option, and that option is quite destructive and very expensive. We really want to know what the other options are. And we've asked that of the DOT. We're waiting for the next meeting to be scheduled, but we don't know. We don't know how fast they're moving. We simply don't know what's happening, and there's a number of us that are going to lose our homes or a significant amount of our properties. The reason that this proposal is expensive and destructive, on the DOT's map, they did not list the well. They didn't even show it. We had to let them know there was a community well there. When we told them that, they said, we'll take this into consideration for our future planning of this project. Well, we've reached out to the well managers, it's Aqua NC, and they said, they can't be sure, but that construction would likely damage the well to be unusable. They didn't say what would happen then, but we kind of assume OWASA might have to come and fix that. We don't know, but if that's the case, then the Orange County should be quite concerned with what would happen from a cost perspective should our entire neighborhood have to be hooked up to city water, including septic systems, which would be affected greatly by this project. We don't believe signal optimization has been done in this corridor of MLK and I-40. If they were to propose that, we would of course be okay with that, but they haven't even suggested that they looked into it. And we feel like that would be an appropriate first step before they go and they start buying homes and knocking them down. We want to work with the DOT. We're very clear about that. We don't want to say not in our backyard. We want to work with them to find a more suitable solution because none of us feel like the solution is anything close to what it should look like for a problem that's moving more traffic through the roads, which we would appreciate. But we just can't stomach this, and it's very difficult for us. Some of us have expressed not being able to sleep at night because of this. But it's worrying all of us because as a community, we're going to be significantly affected. People have said it's walkable. There's a walking loop, and people come from outside the neighborhood to walk it. That would be gone. So the contact of having somebody walk around and waving hi to them or seeing them, gone. It would destroy the neighborhood as we know it, and it's very challenging to accept. And they're all go-forth homes, which is, in Chapel Hill, that's something. So I'm running out of time, but thank you very much. We really hope that you can add us to your agendas going forward and take this matter very seriously, because every single one of us in Northwood is. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brew was the last person signed up to speak at this time. I think I want to just share that the board hears these concerns. We share them. I know the town is also expressed concern. We understand also that you being in the ETJ, sort of in this hybrid area where, you're subject to control of Chapel Hill, but we're your elected officials, and we take that responsibility seriously. And so on behalf of the board, I know we all appreciate you coming out, and I know that we are committed to working with you and the DOT as this process moves forward. And we will make sure that you're informed and included, that the process is transparent, and that as your concerns are passed on to us, we'll pass those on to the DOT as well, and as well as our own concerns about how to manage this project most effectively and reasonably. So we appreciate all of you all coming out tonight. All right. Yes, Commissioner Price.
Do we know when the next meeting or a meeting will be on this topic? I guess Mark does.
It was at the meeting, it was the day that the Awassa pipe broke, when the DOT was holding their first public information meeting here, and it, about 45 minutes in, the building had to be evacuated, so we wouldn't use water here. But what they said was they were going to have to postpone it till after the holidays, till January sometime. And I'd like to highlight a couple of things that the neighbors mentioned. DOT didn't have as much information as I think they should. It was fairly apparent that they had drawn this one plan and showed up with it. And so I would ask that our staff get with DOT and work to gather as much information from them as possible and help fill in the gaps on information that they have about this neighborhood the DOT needs, and share that information with the neighborhood, well before this next meeting, so they come with as much information as possible. And I think there's another way. I think there's a lot of options. So thank you all for coming out.
Bonnie, did you have anything you wanted to add on that? I saw you were leaning in.
We have been reaching out to the DOT. We did it as recently as today, and we have not heard back as to when there will be another meeting.
Commissioner Jacobs?
I was going to say this under board comments, but I'll just go ahead. Excuse me. I called our DOT board member about this situation, and we spoke on Thursday. And I first approached it as how unsatisfactory a process this had been, that there was such short notice, that people were told there was a short comment period, that people whose houses were directly in the potential way of this road got the same minimal notice as everybody else in the neighborhood, and that I was sure that he would think that this was unacceptable, and he agreed. And he said as soon as we got off the phone, he would make some phone calls to see if they could do this better, at least as far as the public outreach. Then we moved to the part which is the subject of the resolution that we added to the agenda about the things that I thought that they had missed. And we have a resolution here about the part that you're not as interested in, which is the northeast quadrant of the interchange, which is the part of Duke Forest that's been protected for 60 years, and that's part of the rural buffer, and he didn't know that that was the case. And then I talked to him about your well and the fact that this would be very disruptive of your neighborhood, and he expressed concern about that. And it turns out that DOT has decided to expedite the widening of I-40. They miscalculated a few years ago about the level of traffic, and now that they realize that how heavy it is, and I kept trying to bring this up at the MPO, and I kept being told it wasn't programmed, they've hired consultants to speed it up, and so the consultants from Cary were the people we were largely speaking with last week. So it wasn't even actually all DOT. So I think there's some sorting out that they have to do based on some of the concerns that were raised to him. And he's the chair of the board of the Department of Transportation. So I would expect that, I would hope that the process will improve, even if we don't necessarily get the answers we want. At least it'll be that participatory democracy that we so value.
Commissioner McKee and Commissioner Price.
Yes, Madam Manager, could you outline the best procedure for the neighbors as far as staying up on current on this process, and whether we should get a mailing list for these folks to make sure that we keep them up to speed?
They could go to the Orange County website and sign up for emails, and then we'd have their email address, and then we can make a distribution list from that. And Todd, that, we would be able to do that, wouldn't we, by that? Yeah. So that, Todd is our Community Relations Director. And so if you go to the Orange County website, and if you have any questions, you can call the manager's office.
Thank you.
Commissioner Price?
Yes, it's unfortunate. This scenario sounds like the Elizabeth Brady Road extension of 10 years ago. And, you know, the bridge was going to go next to my house. But I would ask that we also find out when DOT is meeting, because we found out, just like you did, that they hadn't been out to the site. They didn't know what they were, you know, what the lay of the land was. And we actually had to go to the DOT meeting. So I would also ask that we find out not just open houses that they're going to have here, but whatever is going on in Raleigh as well. And if necessary, we may want to bring it up with our state delegation.
Commissioner Rich?
Just to piggyback on that, I already mentioned it to our state delegation. They're well aware of what's going on, and so any kind of help we can get from them. But also, I just want to also encourage us to coordinate with Chapel Hill, since Chapel Hill is the ones that tell you what happens in your neighborhood, even though you vote for us and you don't vote for them. I think it's really important that we make sure that we're on the same page as Chapel Hill.
All right. Thank you all for coming. Feel free to stay for the rest of the exciting meeting if you'd like, but we understand if you don't want to. You can go home and watch it on TV. All right, that brings us to Section 3, announcements, petitions, and comments by board members. 3-minute limit per commissioner, please. We'll start on this end with Commissioner Price.
I just have one quick question. Madam Manager, this Central Piedmont Community Action, is this the same or a reconfiguration of JACA?
It is. They changed their name, and they're now also in Siler City, and I attend as many meetings as I can.
Okay.
But it's formally JACA.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner McKee?
No comments.
Commissioner Jacobs?
That was my comment.
Commissioner Rich?
One petition, now that the ID law has seemed to have passed, I wonder if we can talk with our director of elections and put in place some sort of program to make sure that every person that can vote in Orange County has an ID. Of course, we don't know what ID they need yet because the law was so vague, the amendment was so vague, but I think it's not too late to get something in place to help folks get IDs.
Yeah, we should probably wait till after the 27th and see what they do.
That's correct.
Yeah, but that's good. Commissioner Burrows.
Once again has something to say. No.
Well, this is it. This is
This is it.
your last chance.
I know,
so.
I'm going for it. I considered being silent just to be consistent. And
Got a lot written down on that
then I
pad
have
right
all
there.
kinds of.
Yeah, she got. It's the airing of grievances.
It's the airing of appreciation in a sideways kind of way. So I'd like to petition staff to review county commissioners' salaries and compensation packages compared to folks, to commissioners around the state. But not just that, I'd like staff to take into account also the number of meetings, because I know that Orange County commissioners have many more meetings than almost, I think, all our peers, if not most of our peers. as well as assigned liaisonships. I don't know if other commissioners in other counties have as many assigned liaisonships, which we do. Orange County commissioners work very hard. It's beyond, as you know, reading the packets and attending meetings. It's not a low-key part-time job. In any kind of way. And I've come to I really do believe it's not particularly sustainable for folks who have a full-time job in which they are not self-employed. And so I think in order to have more diversity over time on the board, not that I'm saying these folks should be, challenged and beaten, that's not what I'm saying, but to have more diversity over the time, I really do think you need to be able to have more people than fall in the narrow band of self-employed or retired. That's a pretty narrow band of folks, and so to open it up, I encourage the manager and her staff to come back with a proposal probably during budget season, and maybe I'll watch that one on TV.
All right, Commissioner Markopoulos?
Nothing tonight, thanks.
Commissioner Jacobs, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, and I'll just join Commissioner Burrows in that request to the manager. If you're planning on doing this at the December meeting, then just ignore it. But I would suggest that after every election, there be a report from the director of the Board of Elections, even if it's just to say, all the machines worked well, we believe we counted all the votes, any provisional ballots were taken care of, and you can still trust that your vote counts in Orange County.
That's a good suggestion. Thank you. All right, I have one item. So a couple of weeks ago, we passed a resolution rescinding a previous board support of Confederate monument on Franklin Street. And in that spirit, I teach this class on civil rights at the law school, and every year the students, I assign them to read this book called The Free Men by John Ely, which is about the struggle for a public accommodations ordinance in Chapel Hill before the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed. And it's all about high school students and college students and their activism, protests, marches, sit-ins. It's a great book if you haven't read it. It's very resonant with a lot of the campus struggles around racial issues today. And the student activists are ultimately unsuccessful. The town refuses to pass public accommodations ordinance, and hundreds of students end up being arrested and tried here in Hillsborough, or not here in Hillsborough, in Hillsborough. And a special judge is appointed. And he is. What happens in the courtroom is the most outlandish injustice. Students are sentenced to years of hard labor, working on a chain gang, working on the roads. They're held in contempt. It's an egregious display of abuse of judicial discretion. Anyway, after these hundreds of students are tried, the Orange County Board of Commissioners passed a resolution honoring the judge for his wonderful service in dealing with these civil rights activists. So what I would like to do is bring back a resolution in the near future rescinding our support for that judge, for the judicial performance that took place here in the county and the treatment of those student protesters. And so I'll bring that back at an upcoming meeting. All right, and with that, we'll move on to item 4, proclamations, resolutions, and special presentations. We have Resolution A is a resolution retiring Canine Lucy, who I believe is here, and transferring her to her former canine handler. The board will consider voting to approve and authorize the chair to sign a resolution retiring Canine Lucy and transferring her to her former canine handler, Malcolm Hester. And Sheriff Blackwood is here and will make a presentation.
Well, I'll be brief. I'll just say that Lacey was brought on with Cagney. They were a team. They were my first bloodhounds, and they have served as well. And I'll say that Lacey did far more than find lost children and find articles that were lost. But when Lacey comes into the room, Lacey brings everybody down to her level. And something special happens. One, they notice her aroma. But the other is they notice her smile. And there's something to be said about therapy dogs. And this is not a therapy dog, but she turned out to be a therapy dog for us. And every time she came in the room, everybody was just overwhelmed with her love. And we're so gracious to her for her service. And I'll say that our canines throughout the nation serve us well. And they put themselves in harm's way so that officers don't have to. And I'm just extremely proud to be able to bid her off to her handler, Malcolm. And Malcolm might want to have something to say about his time working with Lacey. Malcolm.
Lacey wants to go home.
We didn't tell you you would come.
Well, for the 4 years that me and Lacey worked on the road, I enjoyed it. From the first time I saw her when she was tiny, I knew I wanted her. Going through training, that extensive training, it was great. We formed a bond that was like no other. When we get called out to go try to find people, even if we didn't find who we were looking for, I knew she was on track. Come here. Yeah, she's very nervous.
Well, let's go ahead and read the resolution so we can,
Poor Lacey, she's ready to
yeah.
go.
Commissioner Burrows, since this will be the last chance you get to do one of these, why don't you do the honors?
All right, a resolution retiring K-9 Lacey and transferring her to former K-9 handler CPL Malcolm Hester. Whereas the Orange County Sheriff's Office shall retire Police K-9 Lacey, a bloodhound previously used for conducting searches, rescues, and tracking, effective November 13th, 2018. And whereas Lacey is personal property of the county and is no longer of use or value to Orange County. Well, we value her. We're just, well, I'm going to have some editorial comments here. In the Sheriff's Office from this date forth. And whereas Malcolm Hester, previously with the Orange County Sheriff's Office, bonded with and worked with the K-9 from the time of her acquisition as a puppy in February 2015. And whereas Malcolm Hester is willing and able to provide immediate care for Lacey, including calming her down when she's nervous. Editorial comment. And whereas Malcolm Hester will adopt and take full responsibility for Lacey until such time as the K-9 is no longer living, relieving Orange County and the Orange County Sheriff's Office of all obligations and responsibilities of the K-9 in accordance with the provisions of this resolution. And whereas Malcolm Hester is not being coerced, forced, or inappropriately encouraged by Orange County or the Orange County Sheriff's Office to adopt this K-9. And whereas North Carolina General Statutes 153A-176, 160A-265, 160A-266 authorize the county to dispose, and we're really not disposing of her, let's just be clear, of any personal property belonging to it according to the procedures described in Chapter 160A, Article 12. Now, therefore, it be resolved, and this is a lot of legal stuff, but just bear with me, as follows. Malcolm Hester, shall assume full care and responsibility of the K-9, including but not limited to providing adequate water, shelter, and food to the K-9 for the duration of her life, providing the K-9 with adequate health care, including but not limited to vaccinations, medication, and all other medical necessities as needed and as required by Orange County's animal control requirements. And Malcolm Hester shall assume all liability that may result from the K-9's actions, including but not limited to those actions and behaviors learned as a result of the K-9 special training provided by Orange County Sheriff's Office. And Malcolm Hester shall not, a lot of legal stuff, purposely, negligently, or knowingly use the K-9 special skill set developed as a result of its career as a police K-9, either for profit, personal gain, or in any capacity, whether this capacity would put others in danger or not. And Malcolm Hester shall release Orange County and the Orange County Sheriff's Office from liability of any sickness or health deficiencies that resulted from the K-9's work with Orange County Sheriff's Office. And, we're getting there, Malcolm Hester shall not loan, lend, give away, or rid himself of the K-9 in any manner which would result in the K-9 being in the care of another person, business, or entity. And Malcolm Hester shall be solely responsible for the actions of the K-9 while either in his personal care or otherwise, and any personal property equipment assigned specifically to Lacey, such as collars and leashes, and any shelter previously constructed on Malcolm Hester's property becomes the property of Malcolm Hester. This does not include specialized equipment, protective equipment, special police-issued equipment. I move the resolution.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That passes 7-0. Congratulations, Lacey. Congratulations, Malcolm.
I will go to the.
Go give them the, thank you.
And Commissioner Burrows, the night you and I go off the board, they're going to read that same line about no longer of use or value to Orange County.
Wait a second.
Give her a cracker or something.
Yeah, come on, where's the treat, you know?
Thank you so much.
I guess that's not part of the duty.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
Violate the laws there.
Lacey, live and be well.
Bye, Lacey.
All right, next up, item 4B is the resolution regarding the DOT plan for I-40. Commissioner Jacobs, since you brought this forward, I'll let you introduce it and read it.
When, I guess Commissioner Markopoulos and I were here, and we were looking at the maps that DOT was using, they had this big area that northeast of the interchange that just said Duke University. It was totally undifferentiated. And then when they were discussing, the consultants were discussing the environmental impacts, they were talking about feet of streams and steep slopes, and nowhere did they recognize what a significant natural area the Oosting natural area is. And so in consultation with somebody at Duke, I went ahead and proposed this resolution for our consideration. Orange County Board of Commissioners resolution opposing North Carolina Department of Transportation incursion into the Oosting natural area. Whereas Orange County has a longstanding commitment to environmental protection, and whereas for more than 30 years, Orange County, in partnership with Chapel Hill and Carrboro, has been committed to development according to a joint land use plan that protects significant natural areas in the central part of the county, including large sections of Duke Forest in area designated as the rural buffer, and whereas the Henry J. Oosting Natural Area, a segment of Duke Forest adjacent to Woodfield Road at the northeast quadrant of the Interstate 40 intersection with NC 86 Martin Luther King Boulevard, is within the area recognized by local governments for protection, and whereas the Oosting Natural Area is a registered natural heritage area placed in 2004 in the protection program stipulated by the North Carolina Nature Preserves Act, providing crucial connectivity of natural habitats in an increasingly urban and suburban setting across Orange and Durham counties. And whereas the Oosting Natural Area was recognized in 1979 by the North Carolina Department of Transportation's own planning and research branch for, quote, protective measures during the design and construction of I-40, and whereas the Oosting Natural Area, managed by Duke University for, quote, long-range ecological research and related activity since 1959, currently is host to extensive research activities, and whereas any environmental assessment conducted by or on behalf of NCDOT that fails to take into account the rear value of the Oosting Natural Area is insufficient and misleading. Now therefore be it resolved that the Orange County Board of County Commissioners calls upon NCDOT to avoid any additional road or construction incursion into the Henry J. Oosting Natural Area in association with redesigning this interchange or widening I-40 now or in the future. Be it further resolved that the Orange County Board of Commissioners requests that NCDOT carefully consider alternatives to disrupting not only this key segment of Duke Forest, but the homes potentially impacted within the Northwood community through options presented on November 5th, 2018. And I'll move the resolution.
Second.
All right, motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes 7-0. All right, next up, there's no, item 5 is public hearings, of which we have none. That takes us to item 6, which is our regular agenda. The first item, 6A, is the interlocal agreement for the provision of solid waste and recycling programs and services. The board will consider approving an interlocal agreement with the towns of Chapel Hill, Carrboro, and Hillsborough for the provision of solid waste and recycling programs and services and disposition of solid waste and recyclables within Orange County, and authorize the chair to sign. We've got Robert Williams is here, our head of the department. And we also have information to be shared by Commissioners Jacobs and Markopoulos, who were part of the SWAG. And there's also a copy of a PowerPoint this PowerPoint at your places. Good evening.
Good evening, Commissioners. Robert Williams, Director for Solid Waste Management, here before you to share with you some highlights, some additions and changes that were made to an interlocal agreement that's before you this evening. Now, the purpose was to foster continued cooperation between the counties and the towns regarding solid waste management and the services that was provided. Now, this agreement will continue to help meet the needs of the county and towns in a mutual manner. Now, some of the background. Now, the interlocal agreement was worked on jointly by staff from Orange County as well as the towns. The managers from all governing agencies reviewed the interlocal agreement as well as the town and county attorneys. So we received their input. Now, the Solid Waste Advisory Group provided input and was unanimously approved to move the interlocal agreement forward for approval by all jurisdictions. Hillsborough and Carrboro had this item before their boards tonight for approval, and the town of Chapel Hill will seek approving the interlocal agreement at the end of November. The interlocal agreement will continue to recognize UNC Chapel Hill and UNC Healthcare as key stakeholders. They will continue to participate on the SWAG. On SWAG, however, they will not have voting rights regarding the solid waste programs fee. The terms and termination of the agreement, the agreement can be terminated without penalty by all parties, or any individual party or town or county can withdraw, but will have to pay a withdrawal fee that was established with this interlocal agreement. Highlighted in purple with some noted changes. The Management Oversight Committee was established with this interlocal agreement, known as MOCC. Now, the Management Oversight Committee was created to provide a forum to discuss issues related to solid waste management. I like to say that this is a proactive committee, but rather a reactive one. So they will be ahead of any issues or problems associated with solid waste management. Now, with the addition of MOCC, we wanted to show you the interlocal agreement process flow. Now, the process flow, staff receives the information, some tasks or petitions. MOCC reviews and make changes, recommendations as such. Then it goes to SWAG for final approval recommendation to move forward to the respective boards or the Board of County Commissioners for approval if it's appropriate at that time. Some other changes or highlights that we wanted to share with you is highlighting that the county will maintain financial and regulatory and environmental responsibility for the C&D landfill and the closed MSD landfills. The two items that were clarified is that the towns will continue to manage and collect their MSW within their boundaries, and that the interlocal agreement can be amended to clarify changes, access, or ownership if the towns or the county move forward with something different. For recycling, just highlight significant changes will be discussed with MOC prior to implementation, then forward to SWAG. So in other words, we will continue to have lines of communication open with this interlocal agreement. The overview of the regulated recyclable material ordinance. Each town has authorized enforcement of the RRMO within their jurisdiction. Also, the overview of the solid waste programs fee, we have highlighted that the county will notify towns of projected fee changes by February 20th of each year. Also, same for tipping fees or changing fees. By February 20th of each year, the county will notify the towns if there's going to be a change in the fees. Any questions?
Are there questions? Commissioner Price.
I'm sure that SWAG has addressed this, but I was just wondering, what about Mebane? With the city continuing to grow, I would imagine that, the additional homes would have an impact on your calculations. So, are you factoring them in?
Okay, so with Mebane, in the portion of Mebane that's a part of the county, and with them utilizing our services, I will have to take a look at the impact of Mebane and their growing and see how that would impact our services. I can take a look at that and get back to you on that one.
Other questions? Commissioner Rich.
Can you just go over the termination sort of rules again? So if a town terminates, they still have to pay for their fee according to how many households they have, up until what point?
Okay, so if a town terminates, let's say a town terminates here in November, so they're giving us their 12-month termination. That's what we're requiring. They will continue to receive service, and the citizens will continue to pay the solid waste programs fee. At the end of that 12-month, they are no longer receive service from the county. However, for the economic impact that the county has, because of everything that we have to put into providing service, they will pay a 12-month fee based upon the number of units that service for that jurisdiction. So if for example, we're picking up the town of Chapel Hill, and the number escapes me, but I'll just use 10,000 as an example. So they will pay 10,000 a year's worth for 10,000 for those units at the solid waste programs fee for that particular time that they put in their withdrawal notice.
To follow up?
Of course.
So it's just a year, it's not a 2-year termination? It's just 1 year?
Just 1 year. So if you put your termination in right now, I walked away with it in November, that you're going to be with us until October of next year, and you still owe 12 months. So
Okay.
if you put it in 6 months into the system, or you put it in, you still have to give us a 12-month notice.
Whatever month you choose to.
It's going to be
give
12
notice.
months out.
So you pay that, so they'd be paying from November till October.
Right. And
Still getting the service.
Still receiving the service.
Then they would pay for another year, but not getting any service.
And not getting any service.
So it's a 2-year termination fee, okay.
Other questions? Comments? Commissioner Jacobs?
Well, I'm sure that Mr. Williams will find out the answer for Commissioner Price, but I believe we dealt with Mebane before, and the answer was they send all their solid waste to Alamance County, which has a nice big landfill right on the Haw River. But I just wanted to give a little bit of background about how we got to this point. There used to be something in the 1990s called the Landfill Owners Group, which had no authority, essentially. The landfill landfills were operated by the town of Chapel Hill. The solid waste staff worked for the town of Chapel Hill, and Orange County had a public works department that operated the waste and recycling centers. And early in this century, the Board of County Commissioners decided that since it represented everybody in the county, it was willing to take over solid waste operations. And so we did. We set up a task force called the C&D Recycling, Waste and Recycling Task Force, which spent about a year looking at alternatives, came up with that recyclable materials recovery ordinance, and a lot of other things, an environmental ethic that we didn't do anything in other communities with our solid waste that we wouldn't want to have done here. And we set up the Solid Waste Advisory Board, or SWAB, which was all citizen volunteers and one county commissioner. And while it made a lot of good recommendations and sorted through a lot of information, it didn't have the force of being elected officials, and had a difficult time getting the governments to actually respond to its recommendations. So in 2014, we started the Solid Waste Advisory Group, which is all elected officials, or at first was all elected officials. And so a few things I would want to highlight about it, besides what Mr. Williams so ably noted. First is that we invited UNC and UNC Healthcare Hospital to join, even if they're kind of ad hoc members, which was unprecedented. They had never been at the table before. So they participate in all the conversations. They don't necessarily vote because they do not yet have a stake in the game, but that's something to be determined in the future. When we started out, this was incredibly contentious, as Commissioner Rich will remember from being there, and Manager Hammersley will remember. Partially because the way in which our previous manager had treated Chapel Hill and Carborough was so high-handed and so arrogant that some of the elected officials and the managers were furious. And so we started off trying to repair relationships at the same time we were trying to negotiate an agreement. And we had actually hired our interim manager to come in, before he left, to help to coordinate this group. And after the first meeting, he quit because he saw that he thought we were going to be railroaded by Chapel Hill, and he didn't want to have anything to do with it, which was, of course, a reflection of his predecessor who had hired him. But so we spent about a year arguing over things like whether we should use the word shall or may. That was how bad it was. But so here we are with an actual agreement, which was done in a very amicable fashion, which includes not only UNC and UNC Hospital and how we work together, but we set the fees, the managers work on it together instead of the year preceding this discussion. Orange County told the towns it was changing the fee right during the budget process, which was part of the antagonism. So this covers a lot of the recycling issues, storm debris, food waste alternatives is something that the group has agreed that we're going to be working on. Drop-off, 24-hour drop-off sites in each jurisdiction, if we can possibly find them. And we also, in setting a model for the fees, which also took months, we tried to balance having the users pay and the general fund pay, because we saw it as was pointed out by Commissioner Dorson, a fairness issue. And then there was a balance of the towns paying too much or enough for the waste and recycling centers that are not in the municipalities but are right near them. So all of that was done, and this agreement tied up a lot of loose ends, and I think is to paraphrase a former president, it's instead of verify but don't trust, it's trust but verify.
Other comments? I just have one question, and I don't know if this is better answered by our SWAG representatives or Mr. Williams, but so there's this provision that says on the disposal facilities, if any of the jurisdictions plan and develop alternative solid waste disposal facilities, the agreement may be amended. Is there any news or updates about the likelihood of any of the municipalities developing alternative solid waste disposal facilities? Since we've heard periodically there are rumors about transfer stations and, Chapel Hill using that property near its municipal, whatever that is, the,
Sure.
up there off of
So
House Road.
During my short tenure here, we've talked with Chapel Hill, Carborough, Hillsborough about alternative facilities, different locations. So a part of the master solid waste plan will have some verbiage in there that we'll start looking at, that options for either building something, doing something jointly, working with different municipalities, different counties, to see if there is something that we can do jointly in an effort to get a facility that's useful for all of us. So we're going to be looking at that real soon, and that'll be a part of one of our goals.
So it's still in the
It's still
offing.
Yes, we have a ways to go, from my opinion. There are a few things that we have to put in play. I definitely have to show you the goals, and I don't want to share too much with you now. I have to talk to Bonnie about this, but share the goals with the future of solid waste management in Orange County, as well as with the towns. And like I said, and so we want to make sure that we have something that's it's a smart goal, it's achievable. We can work together with it, and it'll be for the good of the county.
All right, great. Thank you. Anything else? All right, then, the action to be taken is that the board approve the agreement and authorize the chair to sign. That's the manager's recommendation.
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a
Second.
Seconded, and now a question. Commissioner Rich.
Ms. Manager, can you just tell us the process of how this goes, where we have to approve it, the municipalities have to approve it. If there are any changes, it comes back to us for an approval. Is that correct?
That's correct. This evening, there's 2 jurisdictions. Who's, Robert?
Hillsborough, Carborough.
Hillsborough and Carborough are considering it tonight, and in December, Chapel Hill will be. So if there were any changes, it would just come back for everybody to read.
Everybody would have to, not only us, everybody would have to go through this process again.
Any other questions? All right, the motion's been made and seconded to adopt the manager's recommendation. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That passes 7-0. All right, item B, 6B is the approval of Motorola Solutions Subscription Services Agreement for Digital Evidence Management. The board will consider approving the Motorola Solutions Agreement for Digital Evidence Management. This is on the police body cams, and you're not Sheriff Blackwood, but the Sheriff's Department is here. Well, he's listed on the thing.
Yeah.
Deputy Sykes is here, and also Jennifer Galassi is here and to make a presentation or to answer questions.
So, good evening. Thank you for allowing us to be here and be a part of all of tonight's excitement. I'll try to keep this as brief as possible. I've got my comments narrowed down to a few bullet points, and then we'll open it up for questions if y'all have any. Formal discussions about body-worn cameras began back in October of 2016. Under the Sheriff's leadership, we have diligently researched and tested the options available in the market during the past 2 years. We're confident that we have selected the best equipment to enhance the law enforcement services provided by our office, to increase transparency and to improve the community's trust in this office. We are appreciative of the collaboration between the Sheriff's Office, the Manager's Office, Board of Commissioners, EMS, IT, Finance Department, and Mobile Communications America to get us to this point. We're excited to begin the implementation, and it seems particularly fitting to unveil the cameras during the first 100 days of Sheriff Blackwood's second term in office. A few things to point out from the contract, which received a thorough review by both the county attorney and the sheriff's legal advisor, Jenny Galassi. The total cost of the camera initiative was $281,058.51. It came in under the $300,000 ceiling that the sheriff reported to the board back in 2016, or shortly thereafter. That cost covers the hardware, software, accessories, maintenance, and digital evidence storage for up to 5 years, or for 5 years. Prior to the conclusion of the 5-year term, replacement devices will be issued out to our personnel at no additional cost. During this first phase, and it will probably cover the entire agency, we're looking at 75 units to roll out initially. That will cover the entire patrol division and all the detention staff immediately. So if you have any questions, I know you've already got the policy that the sheriff has put out and the contract with the vendor.
Are there questions? No? All right. Is there anything that you would like to add? So I have a question. If we approve this tonight, what is the actual timetable for the implementation of the?
So our understanding is that the cameras are literally on the shelf waiting to ship out. We had approached shipping date about twice, and there was additional work that we had to do that we just quite weren't aware of. We got that work done. This is the final part of it tonight. So they're excited about shipping them to us so that they can get paid for them. So it should be fairly quickly. I told you about 2 years ago, July, and I was wrong. So I'm not going to give you another deadline date other than to say as soon as practical and possible.
Well, can you give me a range, like a month, 90 days, 180 days?
I'd say within 90 days, we ought to be there. We've got some equipment that has to supplement the equipment, and I understand that they came and measured the last officer for that today or tomorrow. They're coming tomorrow.
We should be within 3 weeks of most of that equipment coming in.
So this is equipment in addition to the cameras or separate?
And that's
from the
something that
camera?
we've purchased out of a uniform budget. It is the actual platform uniform that they have to put that camera on.
All right, good. Any other questions? All right. John, I know that you looked at this also, and do you have anything you wanted to add?
No, the corporation's representatives were really open-minded and willing to make the changes that were requested, so it was fairly easy to work with.
Great. All right, well, the recommendation is that the board approve the agreement, subject to final review by the county attorney.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
I just want to wish the Sheriff's Department and all of its members well in wearing these cameras.
Thank you very much.
All right. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That passes 7-0.
Thank you very much, and I'd also like to thank Commissioner Burrows for her service.
Thank you.
All right, next up, item 6C is the Triangle Water Supply Partnership Memorandum of Agreement. The board will consider entering into an MOA, a Memorandum of Agreement with Triangle local government jurisdictions and their water supply authorities to create a successor to the Jordan Lake Partnership to be called the Triangle Water Supply Partnership, a regional water supply planning organization, and authorize the manager to sign. This is an item that came up. It was on the consent agenda a few weeks ago. Commissioner Markopoulos had several questions that he raised, and so this is coming back to us in response to those questions and some additional clarification, and Craig Benedict is here to tell us about those.
Good evening, Craig Benedict, Orange County Plan Director. That is correct. Tonight is a memorandum of agreement for the Triangle Water Supply Partnership, originally brought to you on October 16th. In the background, we had about 5 questions that were posed by Commissioner Markopoulos, and we answered them within the abstract. I will go through them briefly and clarify anything that you may need. The Jordan Lake Partnership was the, let's call it the initial organization that was primary responsibility to move forward with asking for new allocations from Jordan Lake. We have been successful with what was requested during that process, and there were some outside entities beyond the triangle that asked for allocations, such as Fayetteville. They did not get allocations in that. Even though Johnson and Harnett County are part of this new wider, they do not have any, they did not receive any allocations in the latest round of requests. But they are part of the greater triangle, and it's better to have them with us at the table to make sure that their growth and our growth is accommodated in whatever regional mechanisms there are. The difference in the Triangle Water Supply Partnership, this is more program-based. Let's say somebody wants to do certain improvements for a certain part of the triangle where the Jordan Lake is, and we could opt out of something that's not specifically related to our interests. If we're working on some sort of improved interconnection between Hillsborough and Owasso and Durham, and we are interested, we can opt into that. So there's a better structure in this agreement for us to have like an annual dues, but plus project-based work as necessary. Ratification, we are now the last ones to sign on to the agreement. Everybody else has signed. So the Triangle Water Supply Partnership is intact, and we'd be the last ones to be part of the membership there. Chapel Hill and Carborough, through Owasso's membership and part of the organization, are fully represented. And we've offered to, with Commissioner Markopoulos or anybody else interested, to sit down with Owasso and the memberships of their board to talk about how all the entities in Orange County are involved in the process of this regional water supply program. And I think I answered number 5 already. Johnson and Harnett County do not have a Jordan Lake allocation, and only if there was a new round of allocations opened up at some distant time in the future, the majority of the water that's allowed to be drawn from the lake, at least as it stands now, has been, allocated in large part. There's a lot of interest, as you read every other year, about the water quality within Jordan Lake, and Commissioner Jacobs was going through a little historical perspective. Maybe he could recount the article that you wrote back in the 70s about Jordan Lake, about how it was the future wasn't as bright, and we're doing everything we can, at least in Orange County, to protect the water quality of waters that are flowing into there. But as it stands now, Johnson and Harnett County have other water supply sources. They are considering some interconnection to some of their adjacent areas, but that would be not an allocation directly to them. That'd have to be somebody else that had an interest in sharing it with them. So that primarily goes through the different aspects of the agreement. If you have anything more specific, I'm here to answer them.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Mr. Benedict? Commissioner Markopoulos.
I know you're shocked.
Yes.
But, first of all, I appreciate that you shared this information. I know I was asking a lot of questions the other night, and it's really important that we understand how much control we have over our water supply and how much control we might cede when we enter into agreements like this. And I'm satisfied that it's a fairly transparent agreement. But a whole nother issue came to my mind when I read this. And I noticed that Wake County, they transferred their Jordan Lake allocation to Cary, and then they did not become party to this agreement. And there are several municipalities in Wake County that are part of the agreement: Apex, Cary, Holly Springs, Morrisville, City of Raleigh. Similarly, we in Orange County, Hillsborough and Carborough and Chapel Hill through OWASA are parties to the agreement. What do we get out of the agreement, or what would we contribute to the agreement? Because it looks like Wake County is neither getting in the way of or contributing to all the municipalities working within the agreement.
There is a complex background to where water supplies come from beyond Jordan Lake. So Wake County has opted to use some of their other water supplies that are available to them. And I think part of the, I would say, year-and-a-half process, even before we got into the allocation process of what we wanted from Jordan Lake, was trying to sort out the viability of existing water resources and quantities from other lakes in the area, everything from Falls Lake, Mickey, and others, and how Wake County and Raleigh fit into the program there. As I understand it, all the partners in the program thought it was better to, for example, Wake County give their allocation directly to Morrisville, Cary, and Apex, and that leave it within their control, because originally they were looking to Wake County for, kind of asking for their share of Jordan Lake, and it was better to just have it within the control of the towns that were needing it. I understand, it goes far beyond just Jordan Lake, take a look at all the water supply resources in the region. And it was even a challenge for Orange County to go from its 1 million gallons a day to 1.5 million gallons a day, because they looked at us as the only entity that did not have a water treatment facility to do anything with it. But I think it was very forward-looking for the county to be involved and to preserve its allocation for the future for specific growth areas that we, of course, decide where it would go. So that's kind of an example of where we took an allocation, and if in partnership with a Hillsborough, Durham, Chapel Hill and Carborough even wanted to offer our allocation, this type of agreement would allow that coordination. I hope that answers.
I understand now.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
we've got this reserved chip that we can play at some point if we so desire. It's hard to imagine exactly what that might be, but.
Other questions? Commissioner Jacobs?
Yeah, as part of the chip goes, we've been paying for our allocation since I've been on the board. Hillsborough stopped paying for its allocation, but when it wanted it again, it was granted back. So we may not have had to pay all those years. It's not a huge amount of money. In fact, during the second recession, not the 9/11 recession, but the 2008, 2009, it was recommended that we stop paying. But we decided that, as was mentioned, that it was an important chip that we could have, whether it was to trade with Durham to get more water and sewer capacity, or to help with one of the other economic development districts. And in fact, I would still hope that when Durham is playing hardball with us about the Eno EDD, that we can talk to them about the possibility of them taking advantage of some of the allocation, which, as I'm sure many in here remember, Orange County elected officials, although not necessarily the commissioners, considered so beneath Orange County that we would never possibly want to drink water from Jordan Lake. But in fact, other people are eager to drink that water. And we have the opportunity to share it through this, but also to share it in more strategic ways if that's what we decide to do.
Other questions or comments? All right, then. Thank you for bringing this back with all this information in response to the questions. It's very helpful, and I appreciate both commissioners' points on the chip. So many complex pieces to this water stuff, including our, infrastructure, as we just learned, despite how lauded the OWASA system is, how vulnerable it also is something I think we need to be thinking about going forward as well. So the recommendation from the manager is that we approve this agreement and authorize her to sign the MOA, and also authorize the manager to designate specific county staff as a representative or alternative representatives to the partnership as necessary, and authorize the payment of the cost shares, again, as determined and as approved in our annual budget.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the last item on the regular agenda is Orange County recommendations regarding items for inclusion in the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners 2019-2020 federal legislative agenda. So we annually do a legislative agenda for the state government. This is same thing, only the board will consider proposed issues and consider approving a resolution regarding items proposed for inclusion in the federal legislative agenda. So you've got in the packet, there is a draft resolution with up to 10 items. There is a copy of our last year's federal proposals, which are denoted with 2 asterisks if they were included in the NCACC proposal. And the third attachment is I guess it's last year's NCACC proposal. And so what we suggested was we start with our last year one and figure out what we want to, if there's anything we want to include or not include. And if we can, I always think it's valuable for us to try to raise up a few particular items. And Mr. Wilder, do you have?
I'm good.
Did I just preempt you? I'm sorry.
You've covered the gambit. You're great.
Yeah, I feel bad though. Yeah.
Just note the deadline for NCACC is November 16th, so that's 3 days from now. And NCACC does this process every 2 years for federal items. I know the item in your package says 2017, but they moved this process 2 months forward, so when they did it 2 years ago, it was actually already 2017. If they'd followed the same process, we'd be in 2019 already, but they moved it up. So that's why it's the dates may seem a little odd.
So this comes before us today. The deadline is 3 days from now, so, but it's a wide open process. If there's things you want to add, if there's things that aren't on here that you'd like to add, we can open the floor for picking a few or all of these things. I would note that the remote sales tax collection item has been resolved by a Supreme Court decision. I would just say as a starting point, I would urge us to consider items that didn't make it onto the list last year. My sense is a lot of these things are going to be on the NCACC list perpetually until they get passed. And some of the items, it might be good for Orange County to have a voice to raise some of the items that have not been viewed so favorably by our state agent organization, like, for example, prohibiting discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity. And with that, I'll turn it over to you all. Commissioner Price, you're our NCACC rep, right?
Yes.
So do you want to add anything, or do you want to start us off with anything?
Well, I will just say that since this is going to NACO, and I serve on a couple of the steering committees and caucus, several of these are going to go forward anyway because we're negotiating them now. the one on workforce development, as well as housing and community economic development. We will be putting those forward, I'm pretty sure. And ending homelessness for veterans. Those will probably be considered, because these are going, obviously, to that convention, the NACO convention. And those are some of the things that they continues. What we're going to try to do with, for example, CDBG and Home and WIOA is to try to raise the amount, since we were fortunate that Congress kept those programs, that we are now going to try to get them to up the ante on those. And things like broadband, well, I'll let Commissioner Rich speak on that since you were on the Technology Steering Committee, but that is something that goes throughout NACO, especially in some of the more rural counties. And that one is going to go for, I don't know, they had some snag this past year. I wasn't on the phone call, so
Yeah.
I'll leave that to you.
Okay.
But I know that that's going to be a major one. And the Stepping Up initiative will probably go forward because that was part of the previous president's initiative.
Commissioner Rich, do you want to follow up?
Yeah, well, just to follow up, I think the snags are is that there's not consensus, there's not agreement in this committee. You have people all over the place, and there's never been a committee meeting, whether it be on the phone or in DC, that we could get everyone to agree on what should be going on with broadband because of the rural-urban divide. I'm hoping, though, that it's coming, that discussion is coming around in full circle so we can get more done, because every time we meet and we don't come to consensus or agreement, nothing happens. So it's just stands still. I do agree with Commissioner Dorson that it would be good to put forward some of the ones that, I agree with the prohibiting discrimination on bias of sexual orientation and gender identity. Also, Medicare for All, I don't know why that's not on there already.
Commissioner Jacobs?
I think we have a good range of federal programs and requests already, but if you want a new one, I would suggest, and Mr. Stansel and Ms. Livingston could give us the proper wording, but there's a federal program that Orange County takes advantage of to the tune of millions of dollars, the Farm and Land and Parkland Preservation Trust Fund, which is not doesn't have a dedicated funding source, and just as in our state agenda, we asked for dedicated funding source for similar purposes. I would suggest that we ask Congress to do the same for its own. With the national park system is billions of dollars in arrears as far as even maintaining itself, and these funds allow us to do matches that have enabled us to do parks and conservation easements for almost 20 years now.
All right, so that's a potential add, dedicated funding for the Farm and Parkland Preservation Trust Fund. Is that what it's called?
He'll give us the right name.
It's now ACEP, the Agricultural Conservation Easement Program. And there's a separate, for parks, well, LWCF has been defunded, so is that, there's really just a state program at this point, so.
Okay, so the federal one is called say again?
Agricultural Conservation Easement Program, ACEP.
Okay, so one of the requests is dedicated funding for the Agricultural Conservation Easement Program? ACEP, is that what you said, or AECP? Okay. All right, that's a good one. We can add that if the board is interested. Any others? Commissioner Markopoulos?
I just have a general question. This is my second year going through this process, and I'm wondering, like, different ways to ask this question. Like what are the success stories in the past of legislation that we've helped launch that have made a difference in the world? Another way to ask the question is, like, on a scale of like 1 to 100, what impact are we having by putting these forward.
Do you mean we, the Orange County Board of Commissioners?
Yeah, just like, I want to feel good about what I'm doing here and feel like there's some power in what we do, and I suspect that there's not much.
Well,
I'd like to be convinced otherwise.
I mean, does anyone want to respond to Mark besides me?
I mean, does anybody remember any great victories of the past?
Well, I mean, there have been some victories, right? The age got raised. That's a thing we endorsed. I don't know that Orange County's role is particular. I see our role, actually, with regard to both the NCA, the North Carolina Association of Commissioners and the National Association, is trying to stake out the left pole, because I consider them generally much more conservative organizations than this board generally. So in this context, I favor the inclusion of things that maybe other county commissions, at least in North Carolina, or maybe not many, are endorsing. So like prohibiting sexual orientation discrimination, or, raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour, which is not on the list either. The Medicaid, Medicare expansion, some of that's on the list, but I think, trying to stake out a position that is more consistent with, I think, the values of the county there's value in that. Does it translate into the actual law getting changed? I don't think so.
I agree. I understand that part, but I think that is where the value is. And I think that it might be worth considering just putting forth 3 instead of 20 and burying the best ones in the midst of, mundane, mediocre, run-of-the-mill requests, right? Like have 3 powerful ones that's all people see when they get it.
That's very similar to what Commissioner Dorson said in agenda review. I think your number was 5, though, right?
5's good.
I said up to 5. I mean,
Yeah.
I defer to the will of the board. But yeah, a lot of these things are going to be on the list no matter what, right?
Right.
So it's just, they get picked. So they've got an agenda. Things get crossed off if they get passed. The other things stay on the agenda. Some of the things Commissioner Price mentioned,
Yeah.
more funding for CDBG, for example. But other stuff doesn't get on there, so.
Well, it also depends on, I think they will use this to see how many counties are in favor of a particular item. And then on some of these, for example, well, only because I was on the Community and Economic Development and Workforce Development Steering Committee, some of those programs were were a priority for our Congressman, David Price. And so it was good to be able to work with him on, or him knowing that we were behind it, and then it was a good relationship in helping to get it passed. So it's, our work also to support our own delegation, and support to that. And I would also, one of the other ones I would add would be, which will probably be considered as the TANF and other the social services block grants, because that's a big part of the Farm Bill, and they have a Rural Action Caucus as well as an Ag something steering committee, agricultural affairs.
Commissioner Jacobs?
To Commissioner Markopoulos's point, I also think that this is more like when we pass resolutions about matters that are like the one that you raised from the audience years ago about taking money out of fighting in Afghanistan and putting it towards schools and infrastructure in the United States. Some people might think it's pointless for us to get involved in things that are beyond our purview, but as Commissioner Dorson said, you're speaking for the residents of Orange County. And so it's a way to articulate what our values are in a larger arena.
I got 2 to suggest.
All right, well, let's see if we could come up with 5, if we can, and let's try to get a list, and then move on.
I'm going to do it.
Go ahead.
So I think we should ask for a Marshall Plan to mitigate climate change, a national Marshall Plan to mitigate climate change, and another one which may or may not help climate change, but to legalize pot. May help climate change.
How does it help? Seriously?
But that,
Well, you're growing plants, you're absorbing.
Can I,
but the only thing about that is, if I may, is that that wouldn't be a federal issue, because states are doing them individually. Unless you're saying,
It is, well, it is a federal issue, actually, because California legalized it, and the feds came in and started busting dispensaries because they
I
have
see
the
what you
legal
mean. Okay.
wherewithal to do that.
Commissioner Rich?
can I add something to your legalizing marijuana? To also rescind all the minor arrests and clear all the records of those that have been arrested for minor possession of marijuana.
That is more of a state issue, since that's, I guess, unless we want to say federal criminal penalties.
Yeah. I guess you're right, it's state, but yeah, well, look, I think it's important. I think they go hand in hand. I mean, you could, yeah, well. That's
All
what I
right.
mean, yeah.
All right. Any other suggestions for the top 5?
I'd like to do it on immigration, but I don't know how to frame it.
All right, well, so here's what we've got so.
Immigration.
Here's what we've got so far. We've got dedicated funding for the Agricultural and Conservation Easement Program, one that's been presented. We've got the prohibit discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity, which is on our list. I had also suggested increasing the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. Not on the list.
It should be.
Then Mark suggested a national Marshall Plan to mitigate climate change, and also suggested the decriminalization of marijuana.
Legalization.
And the legalization
Not
also.
decriminalization.
Legalization of marijuana.
Medicare for all.
No, well, Penny said
Yeah, and rescinding criminal penalties, that's part of the same one. And then Medicare for all was also one that was listed. That is 6. Any others that people want? Commissioner Price mentioned a couple of funding ones.
Well, if you're going to do all new ones, then you don't have to worry about those that are already on the list, because they will go forward more than likely.
All right. Any other discussion?
I was going to make a motion.
All right, please.
Since any number is arbitrary, I move we adopt these 6 items and forward them as our NACO, additional NACO priorities.
Second.
All right, motion's been made and seconded for those 6 items. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No.
Okay, that motion passes 6-1. All right.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So we as staff will put together the resolution with those 6 items, review it with the county attorney's office and with Dave Stansel and any other staff that may be affected. And at some point, we'll work with the chair for your signature, so we'll work with the clerk for your signature so we can send it on to NCAC by Friday.
Very good. Outstanding. All right, next, no reports tonight, so we're on to the consent agenda. Item 8, anybody have any items they want to remove from the consent agenda? Commissioner Rich?
8E?
8E, okay. Any others? All right, I'll take a motion on 8A through D then.
Move the consent agenda, except for E. Or was it
Okay.
D?
What?
E. E was
Yeah,
on
you're
okay.
moving A through D?
Yes.
Second.
All right, motion's been made and seconded to approve items 8A through D. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That passes 7-0. Item 8E, Commissioner Rich.
Yes, quick question on this. On the time frame, it said that the capital loan requests are due on November 30th. That's about 2 weeks from now. So are we not planning on having any loans be reviewed this year?
Yes, we are, as it's parallel with the outside agency process. So we have given that information to the existing outside agencies which would be the nonprofits that would be eligible for this program.
So when are those applications due?
The applications for the outside agency
Yes, sir.
runs through the end of the year, and then we begin the process in January for the awards for the outside agency portion.
Okay, but on the first one, it says November 30th, capital loan request due to the county manager and financial office services. So you need the request for the loan before the outside agency money comes in?
Yes, so what we said and we've got the FAQ that says that the organization should, in a letterhead, make the request to the county manager's office indicating the capital items that they wish to get a loan on.
Okay, so everybody knows that this is due in 2 weeks, that possibly want to
We have
take
been,
part of it?
yes, we have been advertising it and putting it out, and the affected agencies, nonprofit agencies will know. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
so the reason I asked is because I had a meeting with Club Nova, and they were unaware of this, and so I don't know where the disconnect happened. And they actually are thinking of taking advantage of this. So it was a good thing that we met and we talked about it, and I had the clerk send over information to me that was forwarded to Club Nova. So I just wonder if everybody is understanding that when this is due.
As another measure, we have the emails for all of the nonprofits, and we will send an email also.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Then I move 80.
Second.
Motions have been made and seconded. Any discussion for item 8E? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed?
No.
Oh, sorry. That passes 6-1. Sorry about that, Commissioner McKee.
It's all right.
All right, County Manager's Report. Didn't mean to rush that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I have one item that I wanted to report on November 8th, which was your work session. I was not there, and I apologize for that. There was, in the rolling calendar, you may have seen that there was the northern campus as well as the detention center was going to be discussed that evening. That was pulled because of, we are anticipating some budget concerns with that project due to construction costs. And so we'll be bringing that back. However, right now, we're working with the architect, the construction manager, to look at options that we can bring to all of you before we bring it back, with just that there's some budget challenges. So that's why it didn't come forward on November 8th, but we anticipate after the new year, we'll have some options and a better idea of what the gap may be. That concludes my report this evening. Thank you.
All right. County Attorney's Report?
Just one thing to bring to your attention, and some of you may know, there was a lawsuit filed today challenging the constitutionality of the partisan gerrymandering that's happened in North Carolina. It's very similar to the case that was filed in Pennsylvania that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court upheld and found there was unconstitutional partisan gerrymandering going on. It's based on state constitution claims, so very unlikely that it would, any federal court would intervene in this, and it should be decided ultimately by the state Supreme Court.
Isn't there also one in federal court that's been successful and is going back up?
There is one in federal court that ultimately is going to get to the U.S. Supreme Court, but I think that's only challenging the United States congressional seats of North Carolina. I think that one's going to be eventually sent back down or ruled against the plaintiffs in that, but at that point, they would be able to file a separate North Carolina constitutional challenge to that under the in a similar manner to what was filed today. And so it would be heard by a 3-judge panel in Wake County, and probably could be directly appealed to the state Supreme Court.
All right. All right, next up are appointments. So item 11A is Adult Care Home Community Advisory Committee appointments. This is one of those boards that requires the training period, so there's a recommendation to, for 2 appointments for the 1-year preliminary term. And then there are a number of other vacancies still.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I nominate Allison Brown for position 3 and Sade Little for position 6.
Second. All right, motion has been made and seconded. Any other nominations or discussion? All right, then, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That passes 7-0. And again, noting there are 3 other positions vacant on that board. We talked about that at our work session. All right, item 11B is the Agricultural Preservation Board.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to nominate Kim Woods for position number 12.
Second.
All right, motion has been made and seconded. This will fully staff this board. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That passes 7-0. Item 11C is the Alcohol Beverage Control Board.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Rich and then Commissioner Price.
I'd like to nominate Marcus Wilhelm for position number 5.
Second.
Okay, so that's Marcus Wilhelm for position 5. Commissioner Price?
I'd like to nominate Elizabeth Carter for position 5.
Second.
All right, so we've got 2 that have been made and seconded. There's only one vacancy. All right, so we'll take, yes, Commissioner Rich?
Yes, I'd just like to say why I am nominating Mr. Wilhelm. After our meeting last week, we talked about getting more people involved in boards and commissions. He's not been on any of the boards and commissions. We talked about not recycling people. He's someone new. He's a business owner. He understands business. He understands budgets. He understands distribution. I think he would make a great addition.
All right. Commissioner Price, you want to say anything about your recommended nomination?
Yes, well, for one thing, she has been vetted by the board, and just out of respect for the board, I think I would like, that is one reason for nominating her, but she's also been a very active community member, and I would like to see her in this position.
All right, well, we'll take...
Wait.
And I would like to add that she's been vetted, it's not typical recycling, I'd say. She's someone who's been vetted by voters many times, and I think that gives, that would add public confidence to the consideration of the ABC Board.
All right.
And
Commissioner Jacobs?
And she fills the former school board member seat on the ABC board, which
That's right.
prior to Ms. Bedford was Ms. Stuckey.
Who's
So
still there, right?
there's a
Who's still
long
there?
tradition of school board members on that board,
It's because they're big drinkers, right?
after their meetings.
Something like
yes. After meeting with us.
All right, so let's take these nominations one at a time. So the first one was Marcus Wilhelm. All those in favor, and let's show hands.
Aye.
All right.
All right, that's 2 ayes, Markopoulos and Rich, and all those say no. Is everybody else, I presume? So that's 5 noes. All right, and then Elizabeth Carter, all those in favor? So that's 5 in favor, 2 against. All right, so Ms. Carter gets the appointments. And then the last one, 11D, is the Hillsborough Planning Board appointment. There's a recommendation for a second term for Ms. Frazier.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That passes 7-0. All right, there are, I think we're supposed to have a closed session tonight, right?
Yeah.
So I need a motion to go into closed session to discuss the county's position and to instruct the county manager and county attorney on the negotiating position regarding the terms of a contract to purchase real property and to consult with an attorney retained by the board in order to preserve attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the board.
You got it.
Second.
All right, that's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. All right, we're in closed session.